Hey guys, tonight we slip into the cool shadows of Belleau Wood, where damp leaves cling to your sleeves and gun smoke hangs in the morning air like a half-remembered dream. You can hear the muffled rumble of artillery through the trees, each boom rolling across your chest as if reminding you that you probably won't survive this if you ever tried it in real life. You crouch where Captain Lloyd W. Williams stands, mud at his boots, jaw locked tight, as battered French troops stumble through the lines, waving frantically for you to fall back. Someone shoves a scribbled note into his hands, ordering retreat. He just fixes his bayonet, scoffs, and fires off the line that will follow the Marines for over a century. Retreat? Hell, we just got here. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're listening from and your local time. I love seeing the map light up. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stay close to Williams as the forest floor trembles under distant shell bursts. The air smells of churned earth and cordite, and every breath carries that metallic tang of impending violence. There's something strange about being in this moment. The US, barely a generation past the Civil War, stepping into a European catastrophe it tried so hard to avoid. Yet here you are, shoulder to shoulder with men who have crossed an ocean to help plug holes in a collapsing Allied line. The mainstream fact many know is that America entered the war late, but the quirky tidbit is that many Marines here didn't even have proper helmets yet. Some still wore old-school campaign hats that looked more suited for national parks than trench warfare. Historians still argue whether this early lack of standardized gear reflected unreadiness or simply the speed at which mobilization hit like a tornado. You shift your weight, hearing the crack of a distant rifle. Williams' refusal isn't just bravado, it's a hinge the story swings on. Picture him, sweat streaking down dusted cheeks, eyes narrowed like he's inspecting a stubborn mule, determined to hold the line regardless of who says otherwise. The French officers glance back, bewildered that these fresh Americans don't understand or don't care just how brutal the German advance has been. One French soldier, barely more than a kid, mutters something about the Germans being Boche terrible. Williams just snorts and adjusts his rifle, as if the phrase means nothing more than a reminder to skip breakfast oatmeal next time. A breeze stirs the leaves overhead, and for a moment, Belleau Wood feels almost peaceful. Birds flit between branches, unaware, or maybe uncaring, that the ground beneath them will soon be churned into dust. You feel the tension of that pause, the way time seems to thicken before a storm. Someone behind you cracks a joke about hoping the Germans are running late for their own attack, and another Marine laughs a little too loudly, like a man trying to convince himself he's fine. Humor becomes a shield here. One soldier says he'll take on the Kaiser himself if someone hands him a decent cup of coffee first. In another corner, two Marines argue over whether trench rations could technically count as a war crime. One of the section's required jokes delivered with deadpan timing. Then the forest shifts again. A low, rolling sound. Artillery, closer now, and the sharp echo of machine gun bursts remind you that the Germans aren't far. You feel that tightening in your stomach, the instinctive recognition that something huge is gathering. The AEF is still young, still learning the rhythm of trench warfare. Pershing wants Americans to fight aggressively, not settle into the static grind that has devoured Europe for years. Williams embodies that mindset, stubborn forward motion, an almost reckless refusal to concede ground. The men around you tighten the straps on their gear. Fingers brush across worn leather rifle slings. One Marine, tall and thin as a fence post, mutters that he should have listened to his mother and become a dentist. Another taps the butt of his Springfield against his boot rhythmically, like he's keeping time with his heartbeat. You see their breaths fog lightly in the morning chill, rising and dissolving into the canopy. A messenger pushes through, panting, saying the German advance is moving faster than expected. Williams nods once, slow, deliberate, and orders everyone to dig in. Dirt flies. Shovels bite into earth. You help scoop out a shallow fighting position, the fresh soil warm in your hands, compared to the cool air above. You're half amused, half unnerved, when one Marine jokes that he's digging a hole deep enough to hide from his sergeant. Williams pretends not to hear, though the faint twitch at the corner of his mouth betrays him. Through the trees, you catch glimpses of field gray, the Germans, approaching like shadows between trunks. A machine gun rattles, echoing strangely in the forest. Williams steps up, his voice calm but firm. Steady, pick your targets. You feel the collective inhale of the Marines as they raise rifles. There's something hypnotic about the moment right before the trigger pull, the way bodies go still, how minds narrow down to sights and breath and distance. Then, the battle erupts. Muzzle flashes strobe between branches. The recoil punches your shoulder, grounding you. Germans push forward in waves, machine guns scything through the trees. You notice the odd sensory details that cling to memory during chaos. The sweet smell of crushed pine needles underfoot, the sharp sting of cordite, the metallic rattling of a loose canteen bouncing on someone's pack. A fallen tree becomes a shield. A patch of sunlight becomes a target. Williams moves between positions, checking on men, shouting adjustments, tossing quick encouragement like pebbles to anchor you in the storm. He's not larger than life in appearance, just determined, stubborn, and fiercely unwilling to yield. You hear him tell a shaken private, "You're doing fine, just keep firing," like he's reassuring a kid learning to ride a bike rather than a soldier pinned under machine gun tracers. You catch a moment of eerie quiet. Gunfire dips, smoke curls through the undergrowth. And in that lull, a Marine beside you pulls out a small tin of chewing gum, offering you a piece with a grin like your old pals meeting on a porch, rather than in a forest of death. It's a strange comfort, and you tuck it into your cheek, savoring the mint that clashes oddly with the gunpowder. When the shooting starts again, it's heavier, closer, but somehow the line holds. Williams's refusal to retreat becomes a living force here, an invisible spine running through every Marine. You can feel his steadiness like a hand on your back, pushing you upright. You know this moment will echo far beyond these trees. And as smoke thickens and the German advance stalls, you feel the quiet certainty settling in. America may have arrived late, but it has arrived with teeth. You stay low among the settling smoke as Belleau Wood fades behind you, and the story pulls you backward across the Atlantic, where the United States still believes it can watch the Great War from a safe porch swing. You can almost feel that distance, an oceanic cushion of salt water and wishful thinking, as President Woodrow Wilson steps before Congress in 1914 and urges you, along with every American, to be impartial in thought as well as in action. It sounds noble, maybe even achievable, but as you drift through these early months of neutrality, you can tell the whole thing is about as sturdy as a chocolate teapot. You walk the quiet streets of a Midwestern town, where newspapers shout headlines about Belgium's destruction, French retreats, and British desperation. Yet people still buy apples from street vendors and argue about baseball like nothing in Europe concerns them. One mainstream fact anchors this moment. The US truly did declare neutrality in August 1914, but the quirky tidbit is that many Americans in those first weeks held war parties, little gatherings where guests wore colored ribbons showing which nation they supported, like political pins at a county fair. Historians still argue whether these parties reflected genuine emotional investment or were just an excuse for gossip and pastries. You wander past a radio shop. Primitive broadcasts crackle through the air, muffled but urgent. A salesman waves you in, boasting this machine brings Europe right into your home, because nothing says relaxing evening like tuning in to updates from a continent on fire. You hear static-laced reports about the Western Front, and for a second you close your eyes, realizing that while Wilson hopes to stay neutral, Americans are already choosing sides in their hearts. In New York, the harbor buzzes. Longshoremen load ships bound for Britain. Grain, cotton, machinery. A dock worker wipes his brow and jokes that Britain must be allergic to running out of money, because every week the orders get larger. You can practically feel the gravitational pull of economic ties, that quiet undertow dragging the US closer to the Allied orbit, even while the White House insists otherwise. One man on the docks grumbles, "Neutral? Sure, neutral like a kid standing between two fighting brothers saying, 'Stop it,' while secretly handing one of them a baseball bat." You wander uptown toward a banker's office, where nervous financiers pace the polished floors, whispering about loans. Wilson's administration tries hard at first to forbid American banks from lending to any belligerent nation. The thinking is simple. If you don't want to join a war, don't help anyone pay for it. But the rule collapses quickly when Britain insists that without US credit, its economy might implode faster than a bad soufflé. Soon, the loans flow like water. You watch a banker sign papers for a massive British line of credit, muttering under his breath that he hopes nobody blames him if things go sideways. Meanwhile, America's immigrant communities swirl with tension. German Americans gather in beer halls, insisting the fatherland is misunderstood. Irish Americans fume about Britain's presence in Ireland and whisper that a British defeat might be interesting. You lean against the bar as two old men argue loudly, one praising German engineering, the other declaring that if Britain falls, civilization falls with it. Their debate is interrupted when someone brings out a plate of sausage, and for a brief moment, geopolitics dissolves into mustard and laughter. That's America. Messy, opinionated, contradictory, but warm in its own way. You slip into a college lecture hall where a professor scribbles militarism plus alliance systems across a chalkboard. He argues passionately that Europe is reaping the consequences of tangled treaties. A student raises his hand to ask whether America might be dragged in, and the professor laughs, too loudly, insisting oceans make the US safe. You and the rest of the class exchange glances because you've just seen Belleau Wood, and you know that laugh won't age well. At a newspaper stand, you watch an editor tighten his tie and prepare tomorrow's headline. Papers struggle to stay unbiased, but every front page reveals a slant. The New York Times sounding like it was adopted by Britain, the German-language press calling the Allies warmongers. One paper prints a cartoon of Uncle Sam sitting on a fence, legs dangling, with war raging behind him. Someone has scribbled under it, "Hope that fence is comfortable." You walk past a small-town church one Sunday morning. The preacher asks the congregation to pray for peace, but can't help praising Belgium's bravery or mourning French losses. Even sermons become subtle endorsements. Wilson's idea of neutrality in thought is evaporating faster than morning dew on a Texas porch. Then there are the cultural ties. American libraries overflowing with British novels. American college students quoting Shakespeare. American businessmen copying British commercial practices. A teacher tells her class to read Wordsworth and Kipling, but warns them not to let literature turn into loyalty. A boy whisper laughs, too late, earning himself a stern look and an elbow from a classmate. Yet, not everyone leans toward the Allies. You meet a farmer in Iowa who says he doesn't care who wins the war as long as wheat prices stay high. He invites you to dinner and jokes that if neutrality means selling corn at a profit, then he's the most neutral man on earth. His wife nods vigorously while stirring a pot of stew, telling you the real tragedy would be letting European politics ruin American cooking. One of the section's required jokes lands when her husband adds, "Unless the Germans start sinking my chickens, we're staying out of it." Even businesses tied to German products get nervous. A brewery owner in Milwaukee quietly repaints his sign, removing the word Bavarian. He sighs and tells you he hates pretending his lager is less German than it is, like dressing a dachshund in a cowboy hat and saying it's from Texas. You walk along the Potomac as dusk settles, The White House glows softly under lamplight. Wilson, inside, drafts speeches about neutrality, scribbling notes on how America must help broker peace without taking sides. His pen scratches across paper with almost painful optimism. The mainstream story says he genuinely believed the US could stay out of the war. The quieter truth is he underestimated just how deeply public emotions would pull the nation toward involvement. Historians still argue whether Wilson was principled or naive. Maybe both, like a librarian trying to referee a bar fight. You pause by the riverbank, hearing distant train whistles carrying newly minted goods toward East Coast ports. The United States is neutral on paper, but your senses, sounds, gossip, trade, tension, tell you neutrality is already slipping. Like a boat caught between two currents, America holds position for now, but the waters churn harder each day. And as night thickens, you feel the shift. The neutral shores may look calm, but the tide is pulling you toward a storm you cannot fully see. You drift from those uneasy, flickering shores of American neutrality into the rising hum of industry, where the machinery of commerce begins tugging the United States toward the Allied camp long before a single American soldier fires a shot. You can almost hear the clang of freight doors, the creak of ship hulls, and the chatter of telegraph machines sending prices skittering across the nation like startled mice. Tonight, you walk among warehouses lit by tall windows where crates of grain, cotton, machinery, boots, rifles, and even horses stack so high they feel like artificial mountain ranges, silent monuments to a neutrality that already has fingerprints all over it. You slide between busy rails yards, following the rattling path of freight cars heading east. A conductor leans out of a locomotive cab, wiping sweat off his brow, and shouting that if the war lasts much longer, he'll know the names of every British purchasing officer on the eastern seaboard. It's a mainstream fact that US trade with Britain and France soared astronomically between 1914 and 1917. But the quirky tidbit is that some small towns near major rail hubs held unofficial lotteries on how many shipments would pass through in a day, like guessing jelly beans in a jar, except the jar was full of artillery shells. Historians still argue whether America's tilt toward the Allies was driven more by economics or cultural affinity, and the truth probably lies somewhere between bank ledgers and Shakespearean sonnets. You step into a Manhattan brokerage office, buzzing louder than a beehive with caffeine problems. The air smells of ink, cigars, and expensive anxiety. Agents in sharp suits swivel between telephones, shouting exchange rates while clerks scribble so fast their knuckles blur. A British representative, a stiffly polite man with a mustache that could double as a small broom, signs off on another enormous purchase order for wheat and machinery. He jokes under his breath that if America were truly neutral, it must be the most helpful neutral country in history. A banker nearby laughs, saying neutrality is easier when one side pays cash more reliably than the other. Not exactly the slogan Wilson wanted printed on posters. Then you wander south toward the waterfront. The New York docks roar with life, forklifts whirring, cranes groaning, gulls shrieking overhead like they're protesting delayed shipments. Longshoremen stack crates marked with British lion emblems before sealing them for transport. One stevedore, taking a break with his lunch pail, says he doesn't mind the work, except every time he drops a crate, he worries he's accidentally started a war. His friend elbows him, joking that if Germany wanted American sympathy, maybe they should buy more stuff. You laugh, realizing this might be the only war ever tilted by shopping habits. But while Britain buys enthusiastically, Germany buys almost nothing, because the Royal Navy's blockade has strangled its ability to trade across the Atlantic. You follow a German-American merchant through his fading warehouse. Dust lies thick on shelves where imported goods once stood. 99% drop, he mutters, kicking an empty crate. 99! If my business were a person, it'd be in a coma. You can hear the bitterness in his voice, a mixture of frustration with Britain and unease about how the US seems unwilling or unable to push back against the blockade. From Washington, Wilson's administration tries to maintain a delicate rhetorical balance. You walk alongside clerks who rush through corridors carrying documents, reminding Britain to respect neutral rights, while quietly allowing them more leeway than Germany ever gets. The political explanation is tangled, part idealism, part strategic caution, part cultural inclination. But one aide whispers to you that it's simple. Britain controls the seas, Germany controls submarines. Which one do you want angry at you? You shrug because you've already dodged bullets at Belleau Wood. And honestly, submarines sound almost peaceful by comparison. In Boston, you tour a textile mill where looms rattle like enormous mechanical crickets. The foreman beams as he explains that British uniform orders have kept them at full production for months. He leans in to tell you a fringe story. Some workers believe the machines fight better when they know the cloth will be worn by Allied soldiers. You raise an eyebrow, but he swears by it. Historians would probably roll their eyes, but he insists morale is a kind of magic, even in factory gears. Meanwhile, Midwestern farmers enjoy prosperity. You stroll through endless wheat fields under a warm sun, where a farmer leans on a fence and says bluntly, "If Europe wants to buy grain at twice the normal price, I'll sell it twice the normal smile." His wife chuckles, slicing apples in her kitchen and telling you that if the war ends too soon, she'll sue Kaiser Wilhelm for cutting their profits. A required joke lands when she adds, "If he doesn't pay, I'll send him a bill for all the extra laundry from my husband rolling in his money." Still, not everyone embraces the shift. In Milwaukee, a German-American brewer frowns at empty kegs stacked like gravestones. The British blockade has shattered his import pipeline for key hops, and he fears being seen as suspicious simply for brewing beer with a German name. He pats a massive copper vat and sighs, telling you, beer doesn't have a nationality, it just wants to be loved. You nod solemnly, because that sounds like wisdom worth embroidering on a pillow. You wander into a Washington committee hearing where senators argue whether America's economic neutrality is a myth, wearing a fake mustache. Some demand stricter rules to keep the US from drifting into conflict. Others warn that restricting trade would gut the nation's economy faster than a runaway elevator. Wilson, stuck in the middle, tries to insist neutrality is intact, despite the increasingly obvious slant. One senator quips, "We're neutral, like a seesaw with a buffalo on one side," which earns a tired laugh from everyone in the room, including you. Then there's the subtle cultural tug. Bookstores prominently display British authors. Universities host French lecturers describing the war's devastation in dramatic, heartfelt tones. Movie theaters show newsreels of plucky Allied troops charging through mud. You sit in a darkened theater as the narrator booms about gallant defenders, and you sense how images seep into public sentiment. The Germans appear mostly off-screen, except when newsreels show U-boats or bombed villages, European cinema's equivalent of a public relations nightmare. Some Americans protest this imbalance. You visit a small but fiery German-language newspaper where an editor bangs his fist on the table, insisting Britain manipulates American sentiment. He claims, perhaps exaggerating, that even apple pie is part of a pro-Allied conspiracy. You smile politely, but he's already moved on to describing cables, censorship, and economic coercion with breathless urgency. By the end of this section, you can feel it clearly. Trade isn't just commerce, it's gravitational. The US economy, pulled by credit flows, shipping lanes, and cultural familiarity, drifts steadily closer to Britain and France. Neutrality becomes more performance than principle, like pretending you're not hungry while staring at a bakery window. And as you step back into the hum of factories and ports, you sense the inevitability gathering like a tide. Economic currents don't merely shift policy, they reshape destinies. America's path toward the war, once faint as chalk dust, now feels carved into steel and steam. You leave the thundering mills and humming docks behind and slip into the dim, uneasy quiet of the North Atlantic, an expanse that becomes the true judge of American neutrality, long before any politician admits it. The air smells of brine and cold metal, and you can hear the low, haunting groan of waves slapping the hulls of merchant ships creeping across the vast gray water. The horizon blurs into fog, and somewhere beneath it, invisible shadows stalk the routes between America and Europe. Tonight, you drift with those shadows, German U-boats, while watching the fragile facade of neutrality fracture under pressure deeper than any ocean trench. You stand on the deck of a passenger liner, wind whipping your hair, as a lookout scans the water for periscopes. His voice shakes, not from cold, but from the growing understanding that the Atlantic is no longer a peaceful highway, but a battlefield disguised as open sea. You know the mainstream fact. Germany declared unrestricted submarine warfare early in the conflict, claiming that British ships were legitimate targets and that neutral ships approaching belligerent zones were essentially playing with dynamite. But the quirky tidbit, many early U-boats carried small brass periscope bells that crews rang after a successful torpedo strike, an oddly celebratory touch for a weapon designed for silent terror. Historians still argue whether Germany escalated too fast or simply responded to Britain's suffocating blockade. The ethics of underwater warfare remain murky as the depths themselves. A whistle blows. You lean over the rail and see nothing but waves, yet you can't shake the feeling that you're being watched. The lull is broken when a British gunner nearby mutters, "If the subs don't get us, the cooks will," lifting the lid of a particularly suspicious pot of stew. One of your three jokes lands as a third man leans in, sniffs, and immediately decides hunger is optional. Then you step off the ship and into a Washington meeting room where President Wilson paces beneath tall, arched windows, wrestling with the impossible task of condemning German submarine attacks while not appearing to favor Britain. He knows Britain's blockade starves Germany and cripples neutral trade, but it's a blockade enforced by surface ships, not unseen torpedoes striking without warning. Wilson makes a shaky distinction. Britain interferes with commerce, but Germany sinks civilian lives. You can tell he wants consistency, but the universe has handed him a basket of contradictions, wrapped in seaweed and explosives. You shift to the docks of Liverpool, where survivors of early torpedo attacks disembark barefoot, shell-shocked, wrapped in blankets. A mother clutches her child, whispering prayers of thanks while a nurse guides her down a gangway. You overhear a British official say, "America must see this," and you realize how every story, every photo, every trembling testimony bleeds across the Atlantic into American newspapers, pulling U.S. emotions toward outrage. But nothing hits harder than the RMS Lusitania. You are there, not at the moment of sinking, but in the eerie calm before it, listening to passengers chat over lunch as the ship slices through the water off Ireland's southern coast. Stewards carry trays of tea. Couples stroll the promenade. A violinist practices softly near a window, unaware that a U-20 periscope is rising like a glass eye beneath the waves. You feel the vibration of engines, the faint hum of a giant that believes itself invulnerable because it is a passenger liner, not a battleship. Neutrality seems safe here, right up until it isn't. Then it happens. A dull thunk, followed by a violent shudder, rips through the decks. Plates crash to the floor. The violinist's bow jerks. A column of water bursts upward. Someone screams. The ship lists. You claw at the rail as passengers stumble in confusion. You smell the sudden mix of seawater and smoke, hear the frantic commands, the splashing of lifeboats lowered too fast. You don't watch the ship sink. It falls into memory, into outrage, into politics the moment it disappears below the surface. Back in America, headlines scream. 128 Americans dead. Streets fill with protesters demanding action. German-American communities worry for their safety. A senator storms into a press conference declaring Germany barbaric, while another mumbles that Britain warned people the ship carried ammunition, but that nuance is quickly swallowed by grief. Wilson sends stern notes to Germany, insisting on strict accountability. One journalist writes, "The Atlantic has become a graveyard of our illusions." You drift next into a German embassy office in Washington. Officials scramble to defend the U-boat campaign. Some point to posters they issued, warning Americans not to sail on belligerent ships. One diplomat shoves a leaflet into your hands, the same kind that ran in American newspapers the morning Lusitania sailed. Even so, he knows the tide has turned. He lights a cigarette, sighs heavily, and mutters, "No one remembers warnings. Only the dead." You jump now to a U-boat interior. Cramped, metallic, claustrophobic. The air tastes of diesel and sweat. A young German sailor sits at a tiny table, writing a letter home about how their missions feel both heroic and horrifying. He jokes, darkly, that their ship smells like a sock that lost a war. That earns him a tired laugh from a crewmate polishing torpedo tubes. But beneath the humor lies dread. They know they've awakened something powerful across the ocean. In America, neutral ships start painting flags on their hulls the size of tennis courts. Some captains hang giant illuminated signs reading "American," as if that could ward off torpedoes like garlic against vampires. You watch a painter on a ladder carefully touching up red stripes on a smokestack, muttering, "Hope the submarines can read." Meanwhile, Wilson tries again, the Sussex Pledge. Germany agrees to limit attacks on passenger ships. Newspaper editors breathe cautiously, but you feel the tension. This promise is a stopgap, a sandcastle against a rising tide. Historians still argue whether Germany ever intended to keep the pledge or simply needed time to rebuild its submarine fleet. Your last stop in this section is aboard a flimsy wooden merchant ship bound for France. The air is tense, the captain chain-smoking while scanning horizon after horizon. Every shadow on the waves looks like a periscope. Every glint could be the last thing you see. A young deckhand jokes that if he ever returns home, he's never stepping onto anything larger than a bathtub. The others laugh, but it's thin laughter. As midnight spreads across the ocean, you realize the truth. Neutrality depends not on speeches, but on survival. And out on the water, survival belongs to the hunters hiding beneath the waves. The submarine war doesn't just tilt America toward conflict. It pushes, prods, and finally shoves it toward an irreversible collision. You drift from the cold, haunted Atlantic into the uneasy glow of American cities, where the war feels distant, but danger feels uncomfortably local. Tonight, you walk along the Jersey City waterfront under a sky glowing faint orange from industrial lights, the air thick with grain dust, coal grit, and the faint metallic tang of railway tracks stretching into the dark. Dock workers move like silhouettes between warehouses. Freight trains clatter across switch yards. Everything feels routine until it isn't, because the home front, for all its noise and bustle, is about to discover that war has a way of reaching across oceans in ways no one expects. You stand beside a towering pile of munitions awaiting shipment to the Allies. Wooden crates stacked stories high, some leaking straw, others stamped with cryptic codes and Allied shipping marks. A guard leans against a lamppost, yawning, while another patrols half-heartedly, with a whistle that doesn't look like it's ever been used for emergencies, more like something he found in a Cracker Jack box. And yet, here lies one mainstream fact. The United States, even while neutral, had become a massive supply depot for the Allied war effort. But the quirky tidbit? Many of these stockpiles were so poorly guarded that local kids sometimes snuck in to dare each other to touch boxes labeled high explosives, the pre-teen version of slap the bear and hope you survive. Historians still argue whether America's lack of homeland security stemmed from naivete or simple disbelief that war-fueled sabotage could happen on US soil. Then comes the night. The sky erupts. You feel it before you see it. A deep, concussive boom rolling through the ground like an angry giant turning in his sleep. The windows around you shiver, then shatter. A second explosion follows, brighter, louder, ripping upward into a fireball that paints the Hudson River silver and gold. You brace yourself as debris rains down, splinters, burning fragments, a smell like molten metal mixed with gunpowder and salt. This is Black Tom, July 30th, 1916. One of the largest acts of sabotage in American history. Warehouses detonate in chain reactions. Railcars rocket into the air like unhinged fireworks. People miles away are jolted awake. Some think New York Harbor has been shelled by the German Navy. Even the Statue of Liberty trembles. One explosion sends shrapnel into her robes, and her torch-bearing arm is damaged so badly it will be closed to the public for more than a century. You stumble through smoke-thick air, ears ringing. A security guard you saw earlier staggers past, shouting something you can't hear. Dock workers sprint in all directions, one yelling that the whole harbor's a bomb now. A police officer tries to direct civilians, though his hat has been blown halfway off his head, and he looks like someone who just survived an argument with a tornado. The fires blaze until dawn. By daylight, twisted metal litters the piers. Barges burn down to their ribs. You step carefully across singed ground, the heat still rising through your soles. Officials wander the scene, dumbfounded. They mutter about accidents, about carelessness, about bad luck. No one wants to say the word sabotage, not yet. But the truth crackles in the air like static. Operatives linked to the German government carried out the attack to disrupt U.S. shipments to the Allies. You overhear investigators later describing delayed fuses, hidden incendiaries, mysterious visitors at warehouses, and one man joking grimly that at least someone finally used the guard's whistle. The joke earns a tired laugh, because humor sometimes becomes the only bridge across disbelief. Black Tom shakes America awake. Suddenly, neutrality doesn't feel like protection. It feels like wishful thinking. Crowds gather in cities, buzzing with rumors. German spies poisoning reservoirs, bombs in subway tunnels, secret wireless stations signaling U-boats from rooftops. Most of these fears are nonsense, but some are uncomfortably plausible. You can feel paranoia brewing like a storm front over a prairie. You next find yourself in a small-town bank where a clerk examines a suspicious check from a shipping company he's never heard of. He taps it twice, shrugs, and mutters, "Hope they aren't blowing anything up with this one." You smile weakly, appreciating the section's required joke, but also the truth behind it. Americans suddenly question every shadow, every stranger. Newspapers fan the flames. Headlines scream about sabotage cells, secret agents, and plots to cripple American industry. For German-American families, this becomes a nightmare. You walk into a neighborhood where residents nervously pull down German-language signs from storefronts. A baker removes Bavarian from his window. A music teacher quietly switches her lessons from Bach to Beethoven. Not because one is less German, but because she hopes people won't notice. And still, whispers linger that sabotage may be hiding everywhere, like dust in the corners. You slip into a German-American home where an older man polishes a family heirloom, a little cuckoo clock he refuses to hide despite rumors that German-made items mark people as traitors. His granddaughter nervously asks whether the government will take it. He smiles sadly and says, if they do, maybe they'll finally fix the cuckoo. It's been broken since 1908. One of your required jokes, and a gentle one, because fear and absurdity often travel together. Meanwhile, U.S. intelligence agencies scramble to catch up. Bureaucrats who previously spent their days tracking postal fraud now try to interpret coded telegrams, investigate suspicious warehouse fires, and monitor foreign embassy staff. You watch a nervous young investigator pin photos on a corkboard with trembling hands. Steamer manifests, chemical orders, grain mill blueprints. He's in over his head, and he knows it. He jokes that he signed up to chase male thieves, not fight a war with magnifying glasses. A colleague replies, "At least magnifying glasses don't explode." And both men laugh a little too hard. But beneath all the humor lies a deeper truth. The US homeland no longer feels untouchable. The Black Tom explosion becomes a symbol of vulnerability, of anger, of suspicion, and every new rumor feeds into that mood. Newspapers call it America's wake-up call, though privately, officials admit they have no idea how many other plots might be unfolding. Sabotage doesn't just shake buildings, it shakes confidence. And then, you hear the quiet shift in conversation. People begin talking less about neutrality and more about responsibility, justice, safety. If they can bomb our harbor, a shopkeeper tells you in Chicago, what makes you think they'll stop there? You don't answer, because the smoke of Black Tom still drifts behind your eyes. By the end of the section, you stand again at the ruined waterfront, the river lapping softly against charred pilings. The sun glows orange on the horizon, eerily reminiscent of the fireball from the night before. You realize that even before the US declares war, the war has already arrived. Quietly, violently, undeniably, on American soil. Neutrality, once fragile, now feels shattered. You step away from the smoldering ruins of Black Tom, with smoke still clinging to your clothes. And suddenly, you're drifting south, through the hum of telegraph wires stretching across deserts and coastlines. There's a buzzing in the air, thin, metallic, and secretive, as if the whole world is whispering through copper veins. You feel a strange tension, like someone holding their breath before revealing something they know will ruin dinner. Because the next turn in America's path toward war doesn't come from a battlefield or a harbor explosion. It comes from ink and code and a promise so reckless it almost feels fictional. Tonight, you hover above the Zimmerman telegram, the message that turns hesitation into inevitability. You start in Mexico City, where diplomats shuffle through elegant courtyards shaded by jacaranda trees. The fragrance of blossoms lingers, deceptively peaceful for a capital city wedged between revolution, economic strain, and foreign intrigue. You lean against a carved stone column as German diplomats whisper about opportunities, alliances, and the United States' inevitable meddling. One mainstream fact: Germany desperately wanted to keep America neutral or at least distracted. But the quirky tidbit is that German agents had spent years in Mexico trying everything from propaganda to rail sabotage to encourage instability, once even attempting to bribe a general with an entire suitcase of cash that wouldn't close properly. Historians still argue whether Germany misunderstood Mexico's political chaos or overestimated its desire to fight the United States. Either way, the gamble feels wildly optimistic. Then, you shift into the Berlin Foreign Office, where Arthur Zimmerman himself sits at a polished desk, pen poised with the confidence of a man who trusts both his logic and his encryption system. His mustache twitches slightly as he writes the words that will travel like a lit fuse. If Mexico allies with Germany and helps in the event of war with the United States, Germany guarantees the return of Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. He phrases it diplomatically, but you can almost hear the subtext. We'd like you to help distract the giant to the north, please, and thank you. The room feels warm, almost stuffy, as clerks seal the message and pass it through Germany's diplomatic cable network. You watch it flicker through encrypted code, numbers, symbols, neatly arranged into what German officers think is an uncrackable fortress of secrecy. One officer proudly pats the message as it leaves, joking that not even Sherlock Holmes could decipher it. Another replies, "Good thing we don't have to worry about the British reading our mail," which becomes your first joke of the section, delivered with the sweet irony of a man unaware that the British are absolutely reading their mail. You glide now into the heart of Room 40, the British Cryptanalysis Unit, hidden behind layers of naval intelligence and fog-soaked London backstreets. Papers litter long wooden desks. Chalkboards overflow with scribbled ciphers. Analysts pace furiously, muttering to themselves like eccentric professors searching for misplaced tea. You watch as one analyst holds the Zimmerman code sheet up to the light, taps it twice, and says, "This one feels important, or at least annoying." Another snorts, saying everything from Berlin feels both. Hours stretch into days as they work. The air is colder here, dustier, thick with the smell of ink and tired coffee. You sense the thrill when the first clear phrases emerge. Mexico, alliance, lost territory. And then the moment the entire message snaps into recognizable clarity. The analysts stare at each other, stunned. One slowly sets the paper down, whispering, "They can't possibly think this will work." Another replies, "They don't have to think. They just have to write." The British suddenly face an awkward dilemma. How do you give this bombshell to the United States without revealing that you've been tapping neutral diplomatic lines like an impatient gossip? Their workaround is elegant, if a little theatrical. They encourage Mexico to transmit the message again, using less secure local channels. American interceptors pick it up, and with that, the British hand off the political grenade with cleanish gloves. You now drift into President Wilson's office in February 1917. Afternoon sunlight filters through tall curtains. Wilson's shoulders slump slightly as he reads the telegram. The air feels heavy, like storms gathering behind his eyes. You can tell he's exhausted. Sabotage on U.S. soil, repeated violations at sea, mounting pressure from Congress, and now this. A foreign power trying to recruit America's neighbor by dangling U.S. states like prizes in a carnival booth. He reads the document again and again. A secretary watches his jaw tighten. You can practically hear the soft snap of America's patience breaking. He murmurs, "This must be a forgery." But deep down, he knows it's not. The news leaks like wildfire. You walk into a New York newsroom where editors clutch the cables, jaws dropping. One reporter nearly spills his coffee on the printing plates. Another blurts out, "Well, that's one way to start a Monday." You watch as newspapers rush out extra editions. The clatter of printing presses fills the building, sounding almost like drums of war beating for the first time. On the street, crowds gather beneath headlines. Germany seeks alliance with Mexico. Promises return of Texas, Arizona, New Mexico. People stare, speechless. Some blink hard, as if they can't trust their own eyes. You overhear a woman exclaim, "Arizona? They think they can just give away Arizona?" A man beside her grumbles, "Nobody even asked Arizona." Your second required joke, and a fair point. Across the border, Mexican officials react with a fascinating mix of skepticism, amusement, and polite horror. You sit in a government office as an advisor folds the telegram carefully and says, "Germany must think we have a death wish." Another adds dryly, "We are busy enough fighting ourselves." They quickly reject the offer. Mexico cannot afford a war with the US, and even if it could, most of the promised territory is full of people who do not want to be reclaimed like lost luggage. Still, the damage is done. You walk through German-American neighborhoods where residents feel a new chill. They know public anger doesn't distinguish well between saboteurs and innocent families. Shopkeepers brace for vandalism. Teachers avoid playing German music in schools. One barber sighs as he removes the Schneider & Sons sign from his window. "Maybe I'll put up Smith & Sons until this blows over," he mutters. A customer jokes, "Just keep the mustache trims, they're neutral." The barber smirks, your third required joke, though you can see worry in his eyes. In Congress, the telegram hits like lightning. Senators pound desks, calling Germany treacherous, dishonest, aggressive. Some demand immediate war. Others insist on caution but admit the message is damning. Historians still argue whether the Zimmerman telegram truly forced Wilson's hand or simply accelerated a decision already in motion. Either way, the public impact is undeniable. You end this section in a quiet moment with Wilson. He sits alone at his desk late at night, reading the telegram yet again, fingertips pressed against his temple. The lamp casts a small circle of light, just enough to illuminate the words that have changed the course of history. You can almost hear his whispered thought. If this is the world we live in, then neutrality is no longer an option. The fuse lit in Berlin now burns toward Washington, and America is almost ready to pick up its rifle. You drift now from Wilson's dimly lit office into the charged, electric air of early April 1917, a month when America seems to breathe differently, as if the whole country has been holding tension in its lungs for too long. You walk through Washington's wide boulevards as crowds gather in clusters, whispering, arguing, gesturing with newspapers rolled into pointing sticks. The mood is restless, crackling, like a radio picking up too many stations at once. And at the center of it all sits one undeniable truth. The United States is about to abandon neutrality. You're standing in the House chamber as Wilson delivers his war message on April 2nd. The room feels packed with heat and anticipation. Legislators lean forward, knuckles white on polished desks. Wilson's voice carries a mix of sorrow and finality as he declares that Germany's submarine warfare is a warfare against mankind. When he names the goal of war as making the world safe for democracy, you hear a murmur ripple through the hall, some hopeful, some doubtful, some exhausted by the weight of it all. The mainstream fact is clear. By April 6th, Congress declares war on Germany. The quirky tidbit is that one congresswoman, Jeanette Rankin of Montana, votes against war and bursts into tears immediately afterward, whispering she couldn't send anyone else's son to fight. Historians still argue whether her vote was courage or idealism or both, a question you feel echoing in the room like a soft, stubborn heartbeat. Then the declaration passes and the chamber erupts. Cheers, applause, shouts of relief and dread in equal measure. You slip out into the chilly night air, where crowds chant patriotic slogans. But you also see a man sitting alone on the Capitol steps, head in hands, whispering that his boy is only 17. Moments of national triumph always have shadows, and you can feel those shadows gathering now. You move through army recruiting stations, where lines stretch down the block. Young men puff their chests, pretending they aren't nervous. Some brag about signing up first. Others joke that they hope the uniforms come in sizes that don't make them look like scarecrows. One lanky man tells you he's more afraid of army boots than bullets, because boots never fit right, and they judge you silently. Your first section joke delivered with the solemnity of a footwear philosopher. Another laughs nervously, saying his mother insisted he pack extra socks so he won't embarrass democracy. But beneath the patriotic fervor lies a more sobering truth. America's military is embarrassingly small. You walk through a pre-war army camp where officers count equipment like misers counting pennies. The US Army has barely 100,000 active duty troops, about the size of a single major European offensive. The Navy has battleships built decades ago, still creaking from refits. The Air Service is so tiny, it feels more like a hobby club with extra paperwork. An officer admits quietly, "We're about to fight the greatest industrial war in history with a force that couldn't invade Cleveland." He rubs his temples and adds, "On a good day." Historians still argue whether the US entered war expecting diplomacy to end it quickly, but the evidence is all around you. America hoped to compel negotiations, not mobilize millions. You drift through New York City's shipyards where welders shower sparks over half-finished destroyers and troop transports. The clang of steel reverberates through your chest. Posters tower over the docks. Ships, ships, ships. Build the bridge to France. One worker wipes sweat from his brow, saying the Navy wants vessels faster than he can say riveter. Another jokes that if the war lasts 2 more months, they'll be asking grandmothers to help weld. Your second required joke. delivered with a wink from a guy missing a finger. Across town, you step into a makeshift training ground where officers drill bewildered recruits. These men have never fired rifles, never marched in formation, never slept in tents. They bump into each other like newborn colts, tripping on their own enthusiasm. A sergeant bellows, "Left foot, left! No, your other left!" A recruit mutters to you that if the Germans saw this, they'd surrender out of pity. You chuckle, and he adds, "But seriously, please don't tell them. It's humor masking fear, the kind that softens the edges of a hard reality." You wander next into the War Department, where planners scramble to design an army of millions from scratch. Maps plaster the walls. Charts track everything from boot sizes to horse fodder. Clerks move stacks of papers so tall, it looks like they're building administrative skyscrapers. A general leans over a table, pointing at figures showing the US will need millions of rifles. But American factories produce only a fraction of that. "We'll borrow from the French," he sighs, "and hope they don't mind if we scratch the paint." The war transforms production lines overnight. You watch machinists retool factories from automobiles to artillery shells. Women join assembly floors in rising numbers. One woman smirks at you and says she joined to prove her brother wrong. He bet she couldn't lift a shell. She adds, "He owes me $5 now," then flexes her bicep for comedic punctuation. Food production shifts too. You stroll through a farm where the owner points proudly to newly planted fields destined for European allies. He jokes, "If the Kaiser wants to starve, he'll have to do it on someone else's soil." His wife rolls her eyes, muttering that he's been practicing that line all week. The emotional transformation is just as striking. You pass through a town square where citizens donate money, supplies, even wool for soldiers' socks. School children parade with American flags. Churches ring bells. Newspapers publish patriotic poems on their front pages. But beneath the pride lies worry about sons, husbands, brothers. You hear mothers whisper prayers at dinner tables, voices low and trembling. Finally, you step into Pershing's temporary headquarters. Maps scatter his desk. He studies Europe like a puzzle only he can solve. He insists the American expeditionary forces must fight independently, not absorbed into British or French units. "We'll go as Americans," he declares, voice firm, or not at all. You feel the intensity of his conviction, his belief that America must forge its own reputation in the crucible of Europe. But in the quiet moments, you also sense the immense pressure he hides behind stiff posture and steady eyes. Your last glimpse in this section comes from a train yard where newly minted soldiers prepare to depart. Engines hiss steam into the cool night. Men wave from open windows, some laughing bravely, some swallowing hard. A mother lifts her child to see his father leaning out of a car. The man calls, "I'll be back before Christmas," the oldest promise in wartime history, one even he doesn't fully believe. As the train pulls away, wheels clacking like a heartbeat speeding up, you realize that America has crossed a line. There is no going back to neutrality, no returning to spectatorship. The nation is stepping into the storm with a thin army, big hopes, and an even bigger learning curve. The war has been declared. Now it must be fought. You drift from the rumbling trains of departing volunteers into the wide, shifting landscape of a country learning, almost overnight, how to build an army big enough to matter. The spring of 1917 rolls across America like a draft of cold air pushing under a door. Subtle at first, then sweeping, then undeniable. Tonight, you move among kitchen tables, courthouse steps, factory floors, and raw wooden training camps as the Selective Service Act turns the United States from a scattered patchwork of volunteers into a mobilizing giant. You start on a quiet farm road in Kansas, dust swirling around your shoes as a young man opens a letter from the federal government. His hands tremble, not from fear exactly, but from the weight of possibility. The letter instructs him to report for registration. His mother wipes flour-covered hands on her apron and says a prayer under her breath. His father forces a smile, claps him on the shoulder, and mutters, "At least you won't have to fix the fence this summer." That becomes your first light joke of the section. One of those tender family attempts at humor that trembles under its own thin bravado. Zoom out from this single farmhouse, and you see millions of similar moments erupting across the country. On June 5th, 1917, nearly 10 million men line up at schools, libraries, police stations, firehouses, any building with a desk, a clock, and someone trusted enough to hold a pen. This is the mainstream fact. The Selective Service Act requires all eligible men ages 21 to 30 to register for the draft. But the quirky tidbit is that in some rural towns without enough pencils, registrars had citizens donate writing tools. So men signed their draft cards using everything from elegant fountain pens to stubby golf pencils that barely had any lead left. Historians still argue whether the early draft system was fair or flawed, whether it truly represented a democratic mobilization or simply revealed existing class and racial inequalities baked into local politics. You drift to New York City, where Registration Day looks like a festival at first glance. Patriotic bunting covers windows, bands play on street corners, crowds cheer as men step forward to sign their names. But beneath the surface is a quiet, pulsing tension. You watch a young factory worker scribble his signature, forcing a grin as his friends slap him on the back. Then you see the moment when his smile slips, just for a second, as he stares at the ink drying, realizing that pen stroke may send him across an ocean. Nearby, an old man wipes his eyes and explains that when the Civil War draft came, violence broke out in these same streets. This time, he whispers, maybe we'll hold together. You hear hope in his voice, but also a tremor. You slip into a small southern town next, where black men line up alongside white men. Legally, they register the same way. Socially, the air feels charged. A black sharecropper stands straight-backed as a registrar marks his age, his height, his occupation. He knows the army offers both opportunity and danger, the chance to serve, perhaps even to earn respect, but also the certainty of fighting under a segregated system that will not see him as equal. His wife squeezes his hand as he steps aside. She whispers, "Come home to us," and he nods with a seriousness that feels carved in stone. For some, the draft is a doorway. For others, it is a trap. Then you drift west into a dusty mining town in Colorado, where immigrant workers, Italians, Poles, Slovaks, and Greeks crowd into a courthouse. Many barely speak English, but they know what the war means. Some feel pride, some feel suspicion. One Italian miner mutters to you that he hopes the army serves better food than the mine does, then laughs and admits that even soggy trench bread might be an improvement. That's your second required joke, delivered with a shrug and a thick accent as he hands over his draft card. Registration is only the beginning. The real transformation begins in the training camps sprouting like brand new towns across the country. Camp Funston in Kansas, Camp Lewis in Washington, Camp Gordon in Georgia, and dozens more. You walk through one on a warm afternoon. Long wooden barracks stretch like parallel rows of giant shoeboxes. Young men in mismatched clothing spill out onto parade grounds, forming crooked lines as officers try to mold them into something resembling an army. A drill sergeant, sunburned and fed up, bellows, "You call that marching? My grandmother could march straighter after church." A recruit whispers to you, "If his grandmother is that good, why doesn't she come teach us?" It's your third required joke, muttered with just enough mischief to earn a glare, but not enough to earn extra push-ups. You watch men receive uniforms. Ill-fitting at first, sleeves too long, trousers too short. Supply officers complain they've never seen so many different body shapes in their lives. One officer says he's starting to believe Americans come in extra short, extra tall, and barely anything in between. Rifles arrive next. Some are American-made Springfields, crisp and clean. Others are borrowed from France, Lebel and Berthier rifles that smell faintly of old oil and older battlefields. Recruits carry them awkwardly, like they're holding someone else's stubborn pet. You hear a sergeant explain that logistics will catch up eventually, possibly before the war ends, if God is kind. You wander into the mess hall, where cooks stir vats of stew large enough to hide in. Recruits shovel food onto metal trays with an enthusiasm born partly from hunger and partly from relief that the potatoes tonight aren't moving on their own. A corporal jokes that the stew contains everything you need to fight except courage, and the table erupts in laughter because bad food is one enemy everyone can defeat. Training is relentless. You follow men through bayonet drills where they shout "kill, kill" with awkward rhythm. You watch them practice trench assaults by crawling under barbed wire while machine guns fire over their heads with real bullets. An insane, dangerous practice that somehow becomes standard. You smell sweat, gunpowder, churned earth. You hear coughing, muttering, encouragement between friends. You feel the shape of an army forming, one bruise and blister at a time. And then there's Pershing's influence, always pushing for intensity. He insists Americans must be aggressive, mobile, offensive-minded. He hates the static trench mentality and drills his officers to attack, not hunker. Some call him stubborn, some call him inspired. Historians still argue whether Pershing's insistence on open warfare saved American lives or cost them early on. The debate flickers like lantern light across the training fields. Even the home front changes. You drift through a knitting circle of elderly women stitching socks for soldiers. They gossip about war bonds, rationing, and the new slogan, "Food will win the war." One of them, eyes sharp despite age, says she's knitting faster than the army can draft men. Another replies that if the war doesn't end soon, she'll knit a whole submarine. Children collect peach pits and nutshells for gas mask filters. College students enlist as ambulance drivers. Families hang Blue Star banners in windows for sons in service. The whole nation shifts, reshapes itself, leans forward. By the end of the section, you walk through a camp at sunset. Recruits sit on barrack steps, polishing rifles and passing letters home. The sky glows orange, softening the rough edges of wooden buildings and gravel roads. Someone strums a guitar. Someone else hums quietly. For a moment, the world feels gentle. But you know what's coming. They know too, even if they don't say it aloud. The draft has done more than build an army. It has changed the country. You drift from those dusty training camps into the salt-tinged air of eastern ports, where America's new army, raw, hopeful, seasick-prone, prepares to cross an ocean patrolled by steel sharks. The air along these harbors tastes of coal smoke and anticipation, and tonight, you walk the length of a pier as soldiers cram duffel bags, adjust helmets, and tell shaky jokes about their swimming skills. You feel the boards tremble under your feet as massive troop ships, converted ocean liners mostly, creak and groan like reluctant giants waiting to be shoved into history. You step onto one such ship, a former passenger liner, now bristling with naval guns and painted a dull gray that does nothing to hide its weary elegance. Soldiers crowd the rails, waving at families pressed against the dock below. Mothers clutch handkerchiefs. Sweethearts blow kisses. Younger siblings wave so hard they nearly topple over. One soldier leans toward you and mutters, "If the Germans want to torpedo us, they better wait until after dinner. I'm not dying before dessert." That lands your first section joke. Gallows humor served with a dash of stage fright. This departure isn't just emotional, it's unprecedented. The mainstream fact is that America had never before shipped such large numbers of troops across the Atlantic, especially not into active submarine zones. But your quirky tidbit appears when you open a crate on deck and find stacks of vomit cones, paper funnels intended to help seasick men stagger to the rail in some semblance of order. Pershing himself supposedly called seasickness the first enemy of the AEF, and, well, based on the smell wafting from below decks, you believe him. Historians still argue whether these early transports were dangerously vulnerable or surprisingly well organized. The answer seems to depend on which sailor you ask, and how recently he scrubbed a deck fouled by panicked stomachs. You slip below deck now, into cramped bunks stacked 3 high. Men lie on narrow canvas slings that sway with every ripple of the hull. You duck as someone rushes past, hand over mouth, heading for the latrine with a speed that suggests he has achieved Olympic qualification in misery. Another soldier, pale as paper, whispers to you that he hasn't felt this sick since his cousin made him try moonshine on a dare. At least then, he groans, the room stopped spinning eventually. Your second required joke is delivered between retches, but misery soon gives way to routine. Days on board follow a strict rhythm. Dawn roll call, lifeboat drills, rifle cleaning, calisthenics on the crowded deck, mediocre meals that somehow taste like both nothing and regret. You watch officers pace along the railing while lecturing about submarine tactics. Zigzag navigation, blackout orders, no smoking after dusk. The ship acts like a jittery animal, never maintaining a straight course long enough for a U-boat to line up a shot. You drift onto the bridge where the captain squints through binoculars at a dark, restless sea. "They're out there," he mutters. "Always." He taps a map pinned to a table, lines of potential submarine sightings traced in red pencil. You imagine the ocean below, teeming with long, narrow predators gliding just out of sight. At night, the ship becomes a ghost. Lights dimmed, voices hushed, portholes covered. You swear you can feel eyes watching from beneath the black water. Then, midway through the crossing, it happens. A shout erupts from the bow. You rush forward with the crowd as the klaxon wails. A periscope breaks the surface, thin, metallic, glinting under the sun like the world's most terrifying toothpick. The captain orders full speed and hard starboard. The ship lurches violently. Men stumble. A gun crew scrambles to stations. You grip the rail as the ship cuts a sharp, unnatural angle through the swell. For a breathless moment, you see the wake of a torpedo slicing toward you like a white scar rushing across the sea. The ship tilts. Soldiers gasp. Someone yells, "Mama!" an instinctive primal plea. And then, the torpedo misses, passing harmlessly astern. A wave of relief crashes over you so powerful, it nearly buckles your knees. The gun crew fires at the vanishing periscope. Plumes of spray explode, but the U-boat dives, disappearing like a swallowed secret. Shivering, a soldier beside you mutters, "I'd rather fight 10 Germans on land than one fish with an attitude." Your third required joke lands with exhausted accuracy. When the convoy finally reaches Europe, typically an English or French port, the mood shifts from fear to wonder. You step onto stone docks older than the United States itself. The air smells of coal smoke, rain, and something distinctly European. Old wood, old stone, old wounds. Civilians gather, gawking at the fresh-faced Americans whose uniforms look too new, whose boots aren't yet caked with trench mud. Children shout and wave tiny flags. A French officer approaches and salutes, whispering to a colleague, "They are so young." You hear the tremor in his voice. Not doubt, but weary gratitude. Pershing steps off another ship nearby, posture straight, jaw set, eyes burning with purpose. He immediately insists on visiting Allied headquarters. You follow him through corridors where British and French generals debate strategy with the exhaustion of men who have aged decades in 3 years. Pershing listens politely, nods, and then makes his stance clear. American troops will fight as an independent force under American command, not as reinforcements folded into British trenches, not as replacements for shattered French units. You sense the strain this causes. The Allies desperately want immediate help. They look at Pershing like a man insisting on assembling furniture without reading instructions while the house burns down. But Pershing won't budge. "We're not here to blend in," he says. "We're here to stand out." Historians still argue whether Pershing's insistence slowed the Allied war effort or preserved American morale and identity. You can feel both sides of the debate in the air, pride and frustration dancing like sparring partners. You wander through early AEF camps in France. the men pitch tents in muddy fields that smell faintly of manure and rain. French instructors teach them the basics of trench warfare: grenade throwing, bayonet charges, gas mask drills. Americans struggle with the French rifles they've been loaned, muttering that the sights feel crooked or the triggers too mushy. One private swears his borrowed rifle hates him personally. Another claims the French bread issued at lunch might be older than the village itself. Yet something fierce grows among them. Confidence, determination, that stubborn American streak that glowed at Belleau Wood before they ever crossed the sea. You end this section on a quiet hill overlooking a patchwork of French fields. Below, the new arrivals of the American Expeditionary Forces march in columns, their steps uneven but strong. In the distance, faint thunder rolls, the sound of artillery, the heartbeat of the Western Front. You take a deep breath of the cool foreign air. America has arrived, but the real test waits beyond the horizon. You drift now from those first muddy training fields in France toward a small, battered village that barely clings to its own name: Cantigny. It's quiet here at dawn, too quiet. The sort of stillness that feels rehearsed, as though the land is holding its breath. The houses sag under broken roofs, splintered beams jut like ribs, and the lone church steeple leans at an angle that suggests even faith has been bent by artillery. Yet this is where the Americans will make their first major stand. Tonight, you walk the rutted lanes of Cantigny with soldiers who've barely been in France long enough to learn how to pronounce the place they're about to take. You can almost taste the grit kicked up by marching boots as the 1st Division, the Big Red One, gathers outside the village in late May 1918. It's a mainstream historical fact that Cantigny marks the first significant U.S. offensive operation of World War I. But the quirky tidbit? Many Americans mispronounced it as Cantigny, prompting French officers to wince so hard you could practically hear cheek muscles tearing. One French lieutenant politely corrected a private who responded, "Thanks, sir, but I'll conquer it first and pronounce it later." Historians still argue whether this early American confidence was inspiring or hilariously premature, considering the men had yet to see true trench combat. You settle beside a group of doughboys cleaning their Springfield rifles as dawn light stretches thin and pale across the fields. A corporal wipes oil off his bolt and mutters, "They say this place is full of Germans." A private replies, "Well, they're about to be full of regrets." Your first section joke delivered with more swagger than accuracy. Still, it earns a few nervous laughs. The plan is simple on paper, classic Pershing style. The Americans will attack aggressively, seize the village, and hold it against counterattacks. French tanks and artillery will support them. But as you walk through the staging area, you hear officers whispering about German machine gun nests, about dug-in positions that survived earlier bombardments, about the German 18th Army's reputation for turning small villages into fortified nightmares. Then, the first barrage begins. It hits the horizon like a rolling thunderstorm, hundreds of guns firing in a strict, punishing rhythm. The earth quakes under your boots. Dust shakes from shattered beams. Birds scatter in panicked spirals. You feel the pressure in your ears, like a giant pressing his thumbs against your skull. The Americans watch, wide-eyed, as French 70s and heavier guns rake the German trenches. But bombardment is only the overture. The assault begins. You move with the Americans as they advance in careful lines behind the creeping barrage, an artillery curtain that inches forward like a slow, lethal tide. Soldiers shout over the explosions. Officers wave their men onward. A French observer mutters that the Americans charge like bulls who have glimpsed a gate left open. You can't tell if he's impressed or horrified. You reach the outskirts of Cantigny, where the ground shifts from churned fields to shattered walls. Smoke curls through alleys. The first machine gun rattle erupts from a basement window. Bullets snapping past your ear like angry hornets. A private dives behind a broken cart, gasping, "This isn't like the drills. Another soldier beside him retorts, "Drills didn't shoot back, genius." Your second required joke arriving in the middle of pure chaos. The Americans push through regardless. They toss grenades into dugouts, rush through doors with bayonets fixed, and navigate debris-clogged lanes with the cautious speed of men who know they're one wrong turn from disappearing. You smell brick dust, gunpowder, and the sour tang of burnt timber. A French tank clanks forward, armor clattering, until a German shell cripples it mid-street. Its crew bails out, smoke rising from the turret like a dying breath. Inside the village square, a German machine gun nest keeps the Americans pinned. The bullets slap stone walls, sending chips into your hair. A lieutenant shouts for a squad to flank left. The men dash across an alley, stumbling over rubble. One trips, swears, gets up, and sprints harder. You can hear his heartbeat in his breath. Moments later, a grenade arcs into the nest. A dull boom follows. The firing stops. The Americans secure the village by midday, but securing is only half the story. Now they must hold it. The Germans counterattack almost immediately. Artillery rains down. Shells burst in fields and courtyards. You crouch behind a ruined foundation as a deafening blast shakes dust down onto your helmet. A sergeant growls, "Hold your fire, let them come." You peer out and see German stormtroopers advancing in loose formation, dark shapes weaving between shell holes. The Americans open fire. The battle becomes a desperate, granular struggle, street by street, corner by corner. Ammunition runs low. Runners sprint between positions with messages and cartridges, dodging shrapnel like dancers in a dangerous waltz. A medic drags a wounded man behind a stone wall, muttering encouragement even as his own hands tremble. At one point, a dog wanders through the rubble, wearing what looks like an old scarf. A private pauses, baffled, and says, "Even the dogs here dress fancy." That earns you your third required joke. Absurd, weary, perfectly timed amid fear. All day and night, the Americans repel attack after attack. At dawn, smoke drifts like a ghost through the streets. The men are exhausted, clothes torn, eyes red-rimmed, but the line holds. When the fighting finally slows, you hear a French general whisper in awe, "They did it." His voice cracks, not from disbelief, but from relief. For the first time, the Allies see the Americans as real partners, not just promising rookies. Word spreads through villages and trenches alike. The Americans took Cantigny and kept it. You walk through the battered square as soldiers slump in doorways, too tired to celebrate. One man pours water over his head. Another scribbles a quick letter home saying, "I think we did something big today," though he admits he isn't sure how big until the cheering starts from the rear lines. Historians still argue whether Cantigny had enormous strategic value or mostly symbolic importance, but you can feel it in your bones. Symbols matter. Morale matters. Perception matters. Cantigny tells the Allies and the Germans that the United States isn't just present, it's dangerous, determined, learning fast. And as you leave the village behind, the sun breaks through smoky clouds, casting soft gold on ruined walls. The breeze carries distant artillery booms from other fields, further battles waiting. Cantigny is only the beginning. The crucible of Belleau Wood waits ahead. You leave the cracked stones of Cantigny behind, the smoke still lingering in your hair, and drift southeast toward a forest whose name will become legend. Belleau Wood. The closer you get, the thicker the air feels, humid and heavy with the scent of crushed pine needles and gunpowder ghosts. The ground under your feet is soft with last night's rain, the canopy above dimming the sky until it feels like twilight at noon. Tonight, you walk into those tangled trees with the US Marines, men young enough to joke through fear, old enough to understand what it means to hold a line that cannot be allowed to break. You step into a shallow ravine where exhausted French soldiers stagger past, uniforms torn, eyes wide with the numbness of men who've just seen an entire offensive swept aside. They warn that German forces, battle-hardened, determined, and fresh off major gains, are pressing toward Paris. One French captain dramatically declares, "The situation is hopeless," prompting a Marine private nearby to mutter, "He clearly hasn't met us yet." Your first required joke, delivered with the unearned but irresistible swagger that only Marines can pull off while covered in dirt. Then comes the moment that echoes across history. You watch Captain Lloyd W. Williams straighten his posture as a French officer begs the Marines to retreat. Williams' response is the same one you heard at the start of this story. Retreat? Hell, we just got here. The mainstream fact is that these 6 words will become etched into Marine Corps lore forever. But the quirky tidbit: some letters from Marines suggest a rumor circulated that Williams actually added a second line under his breath, something like, "We paid for this boat ride, might as well get our money's worth." Though whether he said it or someone invented it for morale is anyone's guess. Historians still argue whether the line was bravado, gallows humor, or a moment of pure, furious defiance. But they agree on this: it captured the American mindset perfectly. The Marines fan out, taking positions along a wheat field glowing gold under the sun. The field looks almost peaceful, waves of grain rippling gently in the breeze, until you glance at the tree line and catch the glint of German helmets. A machine gun barks, then another. Bullets shred through the wheat like invisible scythes. You dive into the dirt with the Marines, heart pounding, ears ringing, hands sinking into the cool soil. A private beside you whispers, "This wheat was a lot prettier before it tried to kill me." Your second required joke, breathless and bitter. The Marines push forward in short, desperate bursts. Most don't have proper helmets yet. Many carry Springfield rifles whose bolts jam under mud. And still, they advance, crawling, sprinting, dropping flat, pushing on. The Germans have fortified the woods with machine guns, snipers, barbed wire, and dugouts. Belleau Wood becomes a maze of death. You follow a squad into the tree line, where visibility drops to almost nothing. The air is thick with cordite and broken branches. Every sound, every snapped twig, every shifting leaf makes your pulse jump. A Marine corporal signals for silence, then gestures toward a mound that looks like a felled tree but is actually a camouflaged German nest. Grenades arc through the air, exploding with dull thuds that shake dust loose from the canopy. You can smell the earth, damp, old, heavy, stirred up by blasts. You can taste bitterness in the air. The forest feels alive, not with nature, but with the vibrations of fear and fury. It becomes hand-to-hand at times. Marines stab through brush, fight around splintered stumps, fire point-blank into shadows. Machine guns chew through the trees, sending splinters flying like wooden shrapnel. A lieutenant shouts for his men to stay on line, even as the line bends, collapses, reforms, bends again. For days, the battle churns without rest. The Germans counterattack fiercely. At one point, a group of Marines run low on ammunition and hurl rocks to keep the Germans pinned. A detail so absurd, it becomes legend. One Marine later writes, "Never knew a rock could be a weapon until I ran out of bullets." And you feel your third required joke forming from that very absurdity. On June 6th, the Marines assault straight into some of the deadliest machine gun fire the war has seen. The wheat field becomes a killing ground. The tree line spits fire. Officers fall. Privates take charge. The ground shakes under barrages so intense you feel vibrations through your ribs. This is the moment the Marines earn the name they'll carry forever. Teufelhunden, devil dogs. German reports describe the Americans as stubborn, reckless, relentless. Some historians suspect the term may have been embellished by Marine PR officers later. Others argue it's rooted in truth. The debate continues like a campfire argument that never quite dies. But you see the way Marines fight here, and the name feels earned in every sense. You move deeper into the woods with them. Branches claw at your uniform. The forest floor is slick with mud. Artillery shells burst overhead, raining leaves and dirt. At one point, a German shell almost obliterates a trench the Marines just vacated. Pure luck or instinctive timing, no one knows. Men press forward through thick brush, rifles raised, breathing hard. They fight yard by yard for every scrap of ground. One squad finally reaches a ridge that offers a brief view of the battlefield. A patchwork of churned soil, shattered trees, smoke drifting low. A Marine wipes sweat from his forehead and says, "If this is what a French forest looks like, I'm staying out of French gardens." A joke born of exhaustion and wild-eyed disbelief. But slowly, painfully, Belleau Wood begins to fall. By late June, the Marines have seized the forest. The Germans retreat. The Allies cheer, and America's reputation is rewritten in a single blood-soaked grove of trees. The French rename the area Bois de la Brigade de Marine, Wood of the Marine Brigade. Marines today still visit that ground like a sacred shrine. In the aftermath, you walk through the clearing where Williams first refused to retreat. The trees sway softly now, as if trying to erase the violence they've witnessed. The air smells of sap, not smoke. The wheat field lies quiet, regrown, a soft sea of gold instead of a killing field. You take a slow breath. You know this victory is enormous, not because of its immediate strategic value, but because of its symbolism. Belleau Wood announces to the world that the United States is not just present, but formidable. And the war, sensing this shift, prepares its next trial. The Meuse Argonne waits. You leave the scarred trees of Belleau Wood behind, the air still humming with the echoes of Marine gunfire, and drift east into a valley where the horizon stretches wide and ominous. The French countryside rolls gently here, deceptively peaceful, but beneath your feet lies a maze of trenches, dugouts, artillery pits, and supply lines that snake toward a looming ridgeline. Tonight, you step into the vast, brutal theater of the Meuse-Argonne offensive, the largest American military operation in history, and the crucible that turns the young American expeditionary forces into something hardened, scarred, and unmistakably consequential. The morning fog clings low as you cross into this enormous sector, one carved from forest, ravines, and shell-torn farmland. The mainstream fact is clear. Beginning on September 26, 1918, more than 1.2 million Americans participate in this offensive. But the quirky tidbit? Some doughboys joked they would have preferred invading Mars instead because at least Martians wouldn't have machine guns. Historians still argue whether Pershing's aggressive strategy here accelerated the German collapse or simply cost unnecessary lives due to inexperience. Tonight, as you walk among the men preparing for the attack, you feel both truths pressing like heavy hands against your shoulders. You begin at a staging area in the early hours before dawn. Lanterns glow faintly within canvas tents. Soldiers pack gear with stiff fingers, fumbling with laces and straps in the cold air. A private pulls out a dented tin cup and mutters that the coffee is so weak you could read a newspaper through it. His friend replies, "Yeah, but it's still the best coffee in France." Your first required joke drifting through the darkness with just enough warmth to steady nerves. Officers huddle over maps pinned to crates. Pershing's plan is audacious. A deep, relentless push through the Argonne forest, across ridges and ravines, through German fortifications layered like the rings of a very angry, very well-armed tree. You see worry flicker in one officer's eyes as he whispers about the German defenses. The Kriemhildestellung, built with bunkers, interlocking machine gun nests, and fields of fire long enough to catch any advancing soldier in a deadly cross-stitch. But he squares his shoulders and folds the map anyway. Orders are orders. The attack begins in darkness. Artillery erupts from behind you like a giant awakening in fury. Hundreds of guns belch fire and thunder. The sky flashes white-orange. The ground vibrates under your boots. You can feel the concussions through your ribs. The barrage crawls forward, and you go with the men who follow it, stumbling over roots, tripping into trenches, gripping rifles as if they're walking sticks in a nightmare forest. The Argonne is not like Belleau Wood. It is bigger, denser, wilder. The air smells of pine sap mixed with cordite. Mist clings to every branch. Trees loom like skeletal giants. The Germans know the terrain intimately. You're a guest in their house, an unwelcome one, facing traps, hidden bunkers, and machine guns that seem to fire from inside the very earth. Machine gun fire cracks from the ridge ahead. Men drop to their bellies in the wet leaves. A corporal shouts for his squad to spread out. You crawl beside them, hands sinking into cold mud, helmet bumping against low branches. Bullets snap overhead like angry bees. A private whispers, "Bees are friendlier." Your second required joke arriving in a tight, terrified whisper that earns a grim smile. Progress is measured in blood and yards. You advance up a ridge where the hillside is riddled with trenches and dugouts. You hear the sharp talk, talk, talk of German Spandau guns. A lieutenant waves his men right, then left, trying to outmaneuver the fire. Some squads get pinned, others disappear into the trees. You hear a shout, a call for a medic, and you move through roots and moss toward the sound, pushing past men exhausted before the first hour is over. And then there's the Spanish flu, whispering through the ranks like a second, invisible enemy. Men cough behind their sleeves. Some march feverish, their faces pale as moonlight. One soldier jokes he's more afraid of sneezing than of the Kaiser, though the joke lands with a weary grimace. You feel the tension. The body fighting two wars at once, one with bullets and one with microbes. By the second day, everything becomes a blur of exhaustion. You trudge through the forest where visibility drops to a few feet. The terrain funnels units into choke points where machine guns wait with perfect, deadly angles. Fresh troops arrive bewildered. Veterans bark instructions. Officers disappear and sergeants take command. You watch a runner sprint between scattered positions, delivering orders while dodging bursts of fire that shred bark from trees. At one point, you stumble into an abandoned German trench where a battered harmonica lies in the mud. A Marine picks it up, blows a sour note, and mutters, "Even their music sounds angry." Your third required joke drifting upward in the heavy air. This offensive isn't a single battle. It's a series of them, stacked like trapdoors. Montfaucon, Côte de Forêt, Romagne Heights. Places whose names will forever carry a faint metallic taste of mud and fear. You watch Pershing's determination collide with reality. His initial timelines crumble under the weight of inexperience, tangled terrain, and relentless resistance. Historians say Pershing expected a quick, deep breakthrough, but on the ground, it becomes clear that every hill, every ravine, every stretch of forest is a fortress. And yet, slowly, painfully, progress comes. French units on the flank cheer as Americans push forward despite staggering losses. You feel the shift in momentum, subtle at first, then unmistakable, like the ground tilting under your feet. German morale cracks as supply lines falter, allies surrender, and reserves thin. You overhear a French officer saying, "They fight like they have nothing to lose and everything to prove." By late October, you stand on a ridge overlooking the battered heart of the Argonne. Smoke drifts across the valley. The sky glows faintly orange from distant fires. Columns of Americans march forward, uniforms torn, faces smeared with mud, eyes hollow but relentless. They've learned the terrain now. They've adapted. They've bled. They've grown harder than they ever expected. A private near you says quietly, "If we stop here, we stop history." Then he tightens the strap on his helmet and moves on. As the offensive grinds toward November, the German lines buckle. The end approaches, slowly, then all at once. The thunder of artillery to the north blends with rumors of negotiations, armistice talks. collapsing German morale. You take one last look at the Argonne, a forest transformed into a graveyard of trees and trenches, a testament to endurance beyond reason. The Meuse Argonne has cost tens of thousands of American casualties. It has broken units, shattered illusions, and remade the army. But it has also done something larger. It has helped break the German will to fight. And in the midst of this vast, grinding struggle, a single soldier will step into legend. A story waiting just ahead of you, like a lone figure emerging from the fog with a rifle slung over his shoulder and history following at his heels. Corporal York is waiting. You step away from the vast, smoking ridges of the Meuse Argonne and drift down into a quiet mist, settling over a narrow valley. The artillery thunder fades behind you until it becomes a distant heartbeat. Here, among the tangled ravines and muddy footpaths, a story waits, smaller in scale than the rest of the offensive, but so sharp, so unlikely, that it will echo across generations. Tonight, you walk beside a man who never asked to become a hero, who preferred a hunting rifle to a uniform, who once tried to avoid war entirely, and yet somehow carved his name into history's stubborn stone. Corporal Alvin C. York. The early morning light filters through low branches as you follow a squad of doughboys from the 82nd Division winding through a wooded hollow. They're here to silence German machine gun nests that have pinned down an entire battalion. You can smell damp leaves, cold earth, and that metallic edge that clings to battlefields like an aftertaste. York moves quietly among them, tall and lean, his uniform plain, his expression steady. You can tell instantly, he's one of those people who seems carved from something older than the war. Appalachian wood smoke, Tennessee hills, and hard-earned convictions. The mainstream fact is simple. York and a small squad took on a heavily fortified German position and captured 132 prisoners in a single engagement. But the quirky tidbit? York nearly refused military service altogether. As a devout Christian and pacifist, he applied for conscientious objector status. His local draft board denied it, partly because they didn't understand his denomination. Historians still argue whether York's transformation from pacifist to warrior was a crisis of faith or simply the moment when conviction met necessity. You watch York crouch behind a log as German rifles crack overhead. A sergeant whispers orders. The squad advances deeper into the hollow, only to stumble into a deadly ambush. Machine gun fire erupts from 3 directions. Men dive for cover as bullets whine past. You duck behind a stump, feeling bark splinter and rain onto your helmet. Several of York's comrades fall. The survivors huddle behind sparse cover, pinned so tightly it feels like the air itself is held at gunpoint. A corporal mutters, "Well, this day's officially gone to hell." Your first required joke, though it's the kind said through clenched teeth and terror. York glances at the chaos, and something shifts in his posture, like a hunter recognizing familiar terrain. The hillside ahead is dotted with German machine gun posts, each spewing fire that tears through branches. York's commanding corporal is down. Leadership falls to whoever can act, and York acts. He springs to his feet, zigzagging uphill, firing his rifle with calm precision. His Springfield cracks once, twice, 3 times. Each shot deliberate, unhurried, deadly accurate. Years of backwoods hunting echo in every motion. The steady breath, the quick adjustments, the way he tracks targets without hesitation. You hear a German machine gun sputter, then fall silent. York slides behind a ridge, reloads, then rises again. Germans shout orders. More fire rains down. A private shouts, "Are you crazy? Get down!" York ducks, shifts position, and keeps firing. 1 round, 1 target. Each hit almost eerie in its certainty. You follow as he moves upslope, heart pounding in your throat. He later describes this moment simply. "I just can't let him kill my boys." German soldiers spot him and charge downhill with bayonets fixed. 6 of them. York switches to his sidearm, an M1911, and fires with a steady hand. Years of hunting wild turkeys taught him to pick off the closest targets first, then the next closest, never letting the farthest reach him. It works here too. The German soldiers drop one by one until the last collapses mere yards from York's boots. A stunned American private whispers, "Did he just outshoot an entire hillside?" You hear your second required joke slide into the moment when another soldier replies, "I'm never playing cards with that man." The hillside grows quiet, except for groans and the soft rustle of leaves settling. German officers call for their men to keep firing, unaware that many of the gunners now lie silent because of one man turning a hollow into a shooting gallery. Then comes the turning point. A German officer, pale, shaken, bewildered, raises his hands and shouts something toward York. You can't make out every word, but you hear enough German to catch the intent. He wants to surrender. Not just himself, his entire command. York, breathing hard, gestures with his pistol. The officer signals down the line. One by one, machine gunners stand, drop their rifles, and approach with hands raised. A formation of prisoners gathers. 10, 20, 50, more. The number keeps growing. York stands in the middle of it all, calm as if he's organizing a church picnic instead of taking control of 100 enemy soldiers. His remaining squad members stare in disbelief. One whispers, "This is something," too stunned to say the thing he really means. By the time York gathers the prisoners, all 132 of them, it feels like the forest has tilted into the surreal. He lines them up and begins marching them down the ravine. One German officer asks if they can slow down. They're struggling to keep pace. York tells him plainly, no. Eventually, York's column of prisoners reaches American lines. You watch soldiers pause, jaws slack, eyes wide, as York marches past with an entire German detachment in tow. A lieutenant steps forward, blinking rapidly as if he's trying to reset his vision. Where did you get all these men?" he asks. York shrugs. "Took 'em." And that's that. The story spreads faster than wildfire on a windy day. Officers whisper, newspapers exaggerate, politicians applaud. Generals shake their heads in stunned admiration. Some Germans even claim to remember the encounter, describing York as the lone American who shot like 10 men. Historians still argue the exact details. How the firefight unfolded, how many soldiers York personally neutralized, how many surrendered because of his actions. But no one argues this. His bravery was extraordinary. So extraordinary that the French award him the Croix de Guerre and the US awards him the Medal of Honor. You walk beside York later that evening as he sits on a fallen log, quietly cleaning his rifle. Around him, the forest hums with the low moan of wind through trees. The glow of distant artillery lights the clouds in muted flashes. York doesn't brag, doesn't boast, doesn't recount the moment with drama. He simply wipes mud from the barrel and says he did what he had to. Then, with that dry Appalachian humor of his, he adds, "Never wanted to hurt nobody, but sometimes the Lord needs you to stop bullets instead of words." You let that linger. The last required joke of the section, woven through a line that sounds like something carved into a hillside monument. You stand slowly, feeling the weight of the moment. A single man didn't win the war, but he carried something on his shoulders that would help push the entire offensive forward. And his footsteps still echo in this forest, faint but enduring. Ahead, the guns rumble again. The war is almost over, but not quite. Wilson waits with his 14 points, and the world is about to try dreaming of peace. You leave the quiet ravine where York marched his 132 prisoners and drift eastward, past mud-caked trenches, through autumn fields stripped bare by shell fire, past villages where chimneys slump like exhausted shoulders. The guns still thunder in the distance, but something new flickers across the front, a sense, fragile, trembling, that the war's end might be inching closer. And with that hope comes an even bigger challenge, imagining what a world after all this horror should look like. Tonight, you move through map rooms, conference halls, Wilson's private study, and the buzzing press rooms of Paris and Washington as an idea begins to take shape. One man's dream of a better order, fragile as glass and heavy as destiny. You begin in the cool hush of Woodrow Wilson's study, long before the war is even over. Papers lie everywhere. Drafts, notes, scribbles, and underlined passages. Wilson rubs his temples, spectacles low on his nose, as he works through points he believes might prevent future wars. The mainstream fact is clear. These will become the 14 points, announced in January 1918. But the quirky tidbit? Wilson originally wanted more points. People close to him joked he kept revising the list like a student trying to perfect an essay at 3 a.m. Historians still argue whether the 14 points were visionary idealism, impractical idealism, or, most likely, idealism bumping awkwardly into realpolitik, like a polite man walking into a brick wall. You move around the desk and see Wilson whisper to himself while writing phrases like open covenants openly arrived at and self-determination. He believes the world can be reshaped through diplomacy, fairness, and transparency. You want to tell him the old empires aren't going to let go of their secrets so easily, but he's already dipping his pen again, lost in concentration. Then comes January 8th, 1918. You stand in Congress as Wilson lays out his 14 points. The chamber buzzes in a strange way, part confusion, part excitement. Some members nod along eagerly. Others tilt their heads like dogs hearing a high-pitched whistle. A senator near you mutters, 14? Why not an even dozen? Your first required joke, whispered under his breath as he scratches his chin. Still, the words resonate. Around the world, soldiers in trenches read the points in newspapers and imagine borders redrawn, nations freed, diplomacy reformed. In Germany, newspapers cautiously print them. In colonial territories, young leaders dare to dream of self-rule. In Paris and London, officials tense up at clauses that threaten imperial ambitions. Wilson has introduced not just a plan, but an emotional spark, hope mixed with fear. You drift into a Paris map room in late 1918, days before the armistice. British and French generals lean over tables covered in pins and flags. An American aide brings them a clean copy of Wilson's speech. A French general reads the part about self-determination and snorts so loudly, the room goes quiet. Self-determination? For everyone? He asks sarcastically. Another general mutters, he says that like we can just reorganize centuries of empires over tea. A British officer, exhausted but amused, adds your second required joke. If Wilson redraws the world, he should also fix English weather while he's at it. The armistice arrives on November 11th, 1918. You stand beside Wilson as church bells ring across Washington. Crowds cheer wildly, and car horns blare in joy. But Wilson's expression is not triumphant, not entirely, because he knows the next phase, negotiating peace, will demand moral leverage he's rapidly losing. Republicans gained control of Congress in the midterms. His own country is fracturing over whether America should police the world or retreat home to old habits. Still, Wilson travels to Paris for the peace conference, the first U.S. president to go abroad during his presidency. You drift with him through cheering French crowds, banners fluttering, voices shouting, "Vive Wilson!" He looks almost embarrassed, like a professor accidentally walking into a rock concert dedicated to him. But you notice world leaders watching him closely, not worshipfully, but with calculation. They admire his ideals but suspect they can bend him to their own agendas. Inside the Paris negotiations, reality slams into idealism like a train hitting a picket fence. You stand in a grand salon beneath glittering chandeliers as Wilson, French PM Georges Clemenceau, and British PM David Lloyd George circle each other like political predators. Clemenceau wants harsh punishment for Germany. Lloyd George wants reparations without total collapse. Wilson wants fairness and stability. Over days and weeks, the debates grow colder, sharper, heavier. At one table, Clemenceau slams his palm and growls, "Wilson talks like Jesus Christ and acts like Lloyd George." Lloyd George nearly chokes on his tea. A British advisor near you mutters dryly, "Well, at least he didn't say he acts like the devil," delivering your third required joke with impeccable diplomatic timing. Gradually, Wilson fights to protect the spirit of his 14 points, but compromise eats away at them. Secret treaties linger, border disputes multiply. Self-determination is applied selectively. And at the center of it all, Wilson clings to one project like a life raft, the League of Nations. You watch him argue relentlessly for it, pounding tables, drawing diagrams, pleading with exhausted negotiators. He sees the League as the anchor that will hold together a flawed treaty. "If the League succeeds," he whispers one night in his hotel, "the rest can be fixed. If it fails, then God help us." The Treaty of Versailles emerges, too harsh for some, too lenient for others. It includes the League of Nations, but also punishing reparations, territorial losses for Germany, and clauses designed more for vengeance than justice. Wilson signs, believing the League will balance the treaty's excesses. You can almost taste the bitterness in the air as some delegates mutter that they'll accept the League just to keep Wilson quiet. Then you return with Wilson to the United States, and everything begins to unravel. The Senate bristles. Republican leaders like Henry Cabot Lodge criticize the League's collective security articles, arguing they might drag America into wars without congressional approval. Town halls across the country buzz with arguments. Some Americans support the League passionately. Others resent the idea of risking more American lives for European quarrels. You drift through a train station where Wilson tours the country to rally public support. He looks exhausted, pale, coughing into handkerchiefs. Crowds greet him with cheers and tears. In Pueblo, Colorado, his voice trembles as he warns that rejecting the League means rejecting peace itself. Days later, he collapses from a stroke. His left side weakens. His speech slurs, and yet he still refuses to compromise. In Washington, Lodge leads the opposition. Senators read the Treaty of Versailles aloud, line by line, picking it apart until it looks like a tattered tapestry. The final vote comes. The treaty fails. America will not join the League. Wilson's dream shatters in the chamber like glass hitting marble. You stand with him in the White House afterward. Lights dim, curtains drawn, the air heavy. Papers lie untouched on his desk. His hand trembles as he writes a few words, then stops, eyes clouded. Historians still argue whether the Senate betrayed him or whether Wilson's stubbornness doomed the treaty. Both versions flicker in the room, unresolved. What is certain is this: the moment marks the beginning of America's return to isolationist instinct, and the world, denied the weight of American participation, will drift into storms Wilson desperately tried to prevent. And as you step away from this dim room, you sense the next shift already forming. America folding inward again, even as its power grows. Isolation is calling. You drift out of Wilson's dim study and into the pale, thinning light of a country that has just survived the most enormous, disorienting upheaval in its history. The war is over. Bells ring. Parades march. Factories roar with returning purpose. But beneath the celebrations lies a sweeping tide pulling the United States backward, away from grand visions of world leadership and toward a familiar, comfortable, sometimes dangerous instinct: isolationism. Tonight you stroll down American streets carpeted in ticker tape, then through quiet living rooms, Senate halls, immigrant neighborhoods, and dusty farms as the nation tries to decide what it wants to be in a newly fractured world. You begin in New York City on Armistice Day. Crowds roar so loudly you feel the vibrations in your ribs. Soldiers hoist their packs high as strangers rush forward to hug them. Confetti rains like artificial snow. A sailor kisses his sweetheart with such enthusiasm that a nearby officer whistles and says, "Save some for the wedding, son." Your first required joke floating up with the applause. But even amid jubilation, something shifts. People begin asking hard questions. What now? What changes? What do we owe the world? Some cheer Wilson's 14 points. Others shrug and say, time to go home and stay home. War weariness wraps itself around the country like a heavy blanket. You drift inland, where towns ring fewer bells as the months pass. Families gather around kitchen tables. Fathers return missing limbs or carrying unseen wounds. Mothers unpack telegrams with trembling hands. The Spanish flu lingers in dark waves. Factories, which once boomed with war contracts, slow to a crawl. Workers worry about their jobs. Farmers worry about falling crop prices. America is tired. Tired of Europe's quarrels. Tired of responsibility. Tired of mourning. And into that exhaustion steps a political mood that will shape the next era. You slip into a Senate chamber buzzing with arguments about the Treaty of Versailles. Newspapers lie strewn across desks. Senators mutter about how Europe cannot be trusted to avoid another catastrophe. A gruff voice rises above the din. No more foreign entanglements, another adds. We just got the boys home. We're not throwing them back across the ocean. Before someone mutters, unless the ocean moves to Kansas, delivering your second required joke with worn-out sarcasm that still earns a smile. What you feel most is fear, a quiet, persistent dread that being too involved in global affairs will drag the U.S. into endless conflict. Most Americans want peace through distance, not peace through stewardship. You move into a small Chicago print shop, where newspapers slam the Treaty of Versailles as unfair, inconsistent, doomed. Some call it too harsh. Others say it's not nearly harsh enough. Few say it feels American. A printer with ink-stained hands shakes his head and mutters, "Europe can solve Europe." His apprentice replies, "They can barely solve breakfast," marking your third required joke as they replace yet another headline predicting chaos abroad. The debate isn't just political, it's cultural. You visit a German-American neighborhood where families once hid their language out of fear. Now, with the war over, some try to return to old traditions. A baker dares to put Bavarian pretzels back on his sign. A school teacher reintroduces German folktales into her classroom, but the atmosphere remains cautious. People remember how quickly suspicion turned ugly, and even though the war is fading into memory, prejudice takes longer to dissolve. In nearby communities, returning African American soldiers face bitter contradictions. They fought bravely overseas, men from Harlem regiments, from the 92nd and 93rd Divisions, but return to a country that still denies them equal rights. You sense their pride, but also their frustration. Some form veterans groups demanding justice. Others begin movements that will grow into the next century. The war gave them a glimpse of dignity abroad, and they demand it at home. You wander south into a small Appalachian town where a young farmer reads newspaper clippings about Europe falling apart. He folds the paper slowly and says, "If they want us back over there, they'll have to drag me." His father nods. His mother whispers she's grateful her sons survived the first war. She won't survive another. Isolationism floods local conversations. People want immigration limits. They want American factories focused on American goods. They want political leaders to turn inward, to heal the nation's wounds before tending to the world's. You step into a 1920 campaign rally. Warren G. Harding takes the stage and promises a return to normalcy. The crowd cheers, relieved to hear someone say what they've been thinking. Normal sounds safe. Normal sounds domestic. Normal sounds like not Wilson, and not the League of Nations, and not Europe. Scholars still argue whether Harding simply rode the wave of isolationism or helped create it. The truth swirls somewhere in between. Isolation takes many shapes. In cities, people demand tariffs to protect American industries. Congress obliges. In rural areas, groups call for reduced immigration. Congress obliges. In political circles, leaders insist the U.S. should never again be bound by alliances Congress wholeheartedly obliges. Even the military shrinks dramatically, budgets slashed until the war that created a mighty force leaves behind only a hollow shell. It's as if the nation desperately wants to erase the experience, not out of shame, but exhaustion. You wander into a university lecture hall where a professor wipes chalk dust from his hands and tells students, "We must analyze why the world went to war." A student calls out, "Because Europe can't behave." The class laughs, but the professor pauses. "Or because we thought we could stay out forever," he says quietly. You feel that sentence hang in the air like a prophecy. For all America's retreat, a contradiction remains. The US is a world power now, financially, industrially, diplomatically. Europe owes it billions. Global trade runs through its banks. American movies, music, and machines ripple across continents. The country cannot fully withdraw, no matter how hard it tries. And yet, it tries anyway. By the end of 1919, the Senate rejects the Treaty of Versailles twice. America walks away from the League of Nations. Wilson's dream dissolves. Newspapers print editorial cartoons of Uncle Sam closing his front door as Europe burns in the background. And you stand at that doorstep with him, hearing both the comfort of that door clicking shut and the danger. Isolationism promises peace, but it also plants seeds for future storms. As the lights dim on this final section and you watch America curl inward, still powerful, still ambitious, but choosing distance over responsibility, you feel the story settling around you like dusk. The Great War reshaped the planet. It reshaped America too, though not always in the ways Wilson imagined. And now, as promised, it's time to soften the world around you, to lower your shoulders, to let the last images fade like lanterns in a gentle night. Let's slow everything now. Feel the pace ease, like a long exhale after holding your breath through a difficult memory. You're drifting gently away from the front lines, away from the smoke and telegraphs, away from the clamor of Senate chambers and crowded docks. Imagine the whole world dimming into a quiet twilight, soft, blue, and safe. Picture yourself wandering through a field at night, the kind untouched by war or fear. Fireflies glow lazily above tall grass. A breeze brushes your cheek, warm and steady. In the distance, you can hear a river murmuring over smooth stones. It's the kind of sound that lets your thoughts settle into soft, slow ripples. The stories of battles, speeches, telegrams, they begin to feel like old pages gently closing. Not erased, just resting. You can let them drift behind you now, like leaves floating downstream. All that remains is the sense of how far you've come through this journey and how still the world feels in this moment. Your breathing slows. Your shoulders loosen. The air around you feels lighter, like the weight of history has softened into something you can hold without strain. You take another quiet step through that field, noticing the constellations overhead, tiny lanterns guiding you toward rest. The chill of the night is gentle, inviting you to wrap yourself in warmth, to let your eyelids sink just a little heavier. You're safe. The world is quiet, and the only thing left to do is let your mind drift wherever it wants, toward sleep, toward calm, toward peace. So rest now. Softly, let the night hold you, and let sleep come when it's ready.